Welcome back. Services like Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, all could be affected by an upcoming showdown in the courts. Well, a court of sorts. A three-judge panel known as the Copyright Royalty Board will soon decide the royalty rates for musicians on those platforms. And it's a $7.8 billion case that could change how you stream your music. But it's not that talked about. So joining us to help fix that is Eriq Gardner, the national correspondent for Puck News. Eriq, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So before we get into the details of $7.8 billion and what that means, can we talk a little bit about this Copyright Royalty Board? Because this case is going to be decided by, quote, judges, but they're not the typical judges. So tell us a little bit about this body.
Absolutely. I mean, most people think about judges and they think about courts, but this one actually takes place in the Library of Congress. Back in the 1990s, Congress established how we should be paid for digital music, how streamers and how anyone who's downloading music, how those royalties should flow. And so no one has to wait around to use music. You can have permission right away. But the question is, how much should these streamers be paying? What percentage of their revenue should they have to fork over to songwriters? So these three judges within the Library of Congress, called the Copyright Royalty Board here, basically about the worth of music from both the publishers and the songwriters and the streamers, and they make a decision about what's the fair rate.
Setting the stage a little bit more here, because we actually just had the former general counsel of Snapchat on talking about privacy and how Congress has never been able to keep up the law to follow technology when we're talking about privacy. But here, this is actually one of those rare circumstances where Congress has made a recent update to kind of keep up with the digital streaming times. Under the Trump administration, we had the Music Modernization Act. But how does that help frame the issue before we get into this case, the $7.8 billion case? What does the Music Modernization Act do, and how does that set the stage?
Sure. Well, the history of music and regulation is a long one, and this one goes back 100 years, and it's been quite confusing and quite a mess. I mean, it's heavily regulated. There's an argument to be made that there's no industry in America that's regulated quite like music. Many years have gone by, and it's really tough to change the system because every congressman has restaurants that play music in their district. Every congressman has radio stations that play music. And it takes a lot of people to get onto the same page to do anything. The most recent change in 2018 was one of the Trump administration's sole legislative accomplishments, and they changed basically how these judges will decide what is the fair rates. They will decide what the market would be if these songwriters were negotiating with the streamers, whether they have the real power to withhold their music. They don't, but these judges will hear all sorts of evidence about what the how you get to this fair rate, and that's basically what this legislation has done.
So distill for us what is about to happen. This case is about to go before these royalty board judges. You call it a $7.8 billion case that no one's talking about. Tell us first, when is this going to happen, and what are the two sides arguing here? What are they coming to the table with?
Yeah, so this happens right after Labor Day. It's going to be in some conference room in the Library of Congress, where it'll look like a pretty regular trial. The streamers, the Apples and Spotifys, are going to get up and argue that 10% of their U.S. income should go to publishers and songwriters. And the songwriters are going to say, no, that's not nearly enough. And they're going to argue that 20% should go. And that's how you get to the whole, multi-billion-dollar difference is the value of those two sides. So they'll call witnesses, music industry experts, and they'll present, documents about the health of the industry and how much this music means to the services, whether people are signing up because of the music or whether they're signing up for other things. and the judges will consider all of this, and then in a few months' time they'll come to a decision. And no matter what happens, I'm sure it'll be appealed as well.
Now, all of this, we're having this discussion, of course, at a timely moment in music history. We're getting a Beyonce album, and those streaming numbers are going up. But big names are involved in this discussion, in this broader national conversation we've been having about musicians getting paid what they're owed and songwriters getting paid what they're owed. But there are any big names participating in this case or on the outside of it?
I expect that we'll be hearing from, the leading executives for all these streaming platforms. There are also, 6 or 7 songwriters themselves who are going to testify. You might not recognize their names, but they have written hits for some of the biggest songwriters out there, including like Taylor Swift and Beyonce and all that. And music is one of those things that when it comes to regulation and these sorts of cases goes over a lot of people's heads, and maybe that's why we don't discuss it as much. I don't expect too many people will be tuning into the streamed version of this trial, but it'll be out there, and maybe it'll get more attention.
We like cameras in the courtroom. We like watching stream trials, so we'll certainly keep an eye on it and hopefully have you back after Labor Day and after we get a final decision. I should also say that decisions from the royalty board actually go up to a real court, the D.C. Circuit, which we've talked about on this show a lot. We'll have to have you back when that decision comes down. Eriq Gardner with Puck News. Thanks for joining us.